Welcome to the flight levels. When I was a student pilot, I was taught to use VX incorrectly, and more than likely, I bet you were too. Today, we're going into what is VX, when to use it, but even more importantly, when not to use it. Let's get to it. If you haven't already seen it, be sure to check out my other video all about the aerodynamics behind VX and VY. It's worth a watch. So when I was a student, my instructor always gave the example of taking off from some airport and then climbing over some mountain ridge. And presumably, if you took off from this airport and flew out this mountain, you would only have so much distance to climb over the mountain. So, and therefore, you would want to climb at VX, which gives you the best angle of climb. And to my inexperienced mind, that made sense, and I went along with it. But in the past 12 years of flying around the mountains of California and Colorado, that's a bunch of nonsense. I have never once been restricted by flying directly at a mountain ridge. There is always wide open valleys and areas for you to fly around, which does not limit the distance you fly. And hence, since distance was not a limitation, I've always climbed at VY, which gave me the best rate of climb. And this enabled me to get above the mountain ridges to the height I wanted to cross them at as fast as possible. In addition, climbing at VY being a faster speed provides better cooling for your engine, and it also lowers your nose so you can see over the front of the plane even better. If you find yourself in a box canyon where you can't turn around and you're trying to climb out of it using VX, you have done something terribly wrong in the first place. Now, Joe, where might VX be appropriate? Well, there are some airports where they have obstacles just off the departure end of the runway. And when I say just off the departure end, I'm talking within 300 feet or so. Now, if these obstacles we're looking at are further away than that, there is this magical maneuver that I'm going to share with you to avoid it. It's called a turn. You see, normally we're taught to fly runway heading until we get to a certain altitude, and most of the time that is appropriate. But if there's an obstacle at the end of the runway that you can turn around, there's nothing restricting you from doing so. And I would highly advise that turning is advisable over forcing yourself over an obstacle using VX. Let's go through a real world example. So let's take a look over here at Sonoma Sky Park, which is an airport that I would take students when I was an instructor over in Livermore, California. And we can see here, it's a pretty short runway at just 2,490 feet long. And there are trees just off both ends of the runway. And if we take a look over here, we can see that here is the runway over here. And if we just take a look, yep, there are the trees just beyond the runway. So let's go through the POH of a Piper Archer, which is very similar to the plane I used to fly, and take a look at what some performance data might look like. By the way, this is exactly the kind of discussion DPEs like to have on exams over your check ride. And if you want to practice answering things like this out loud, I launched an app called Check Ride Prep AI. It's an AI examiner that quizzes you on oral topics and follows up based on whatever you say, just like a real DPE would. There's a free demo at checkride.flight-levels.com, or you can do a search for Check Ride Prep AI on the App Store. Let's get back to it. Okay, so let's take a look at the POH for the Piper Archer. And we're going to start by looking at the flaps up takeoff performance, which mostly resembles a normal technique. And this airport is basically at sea level, but let's say it's a warm day and we're at 80 degrees Fahrenheit. So we're going to bring our pointer up to 80 degrees at sea level, bring that over to our max takeoff weight of 2550. And then just bring that straight on over. We'll assume no wind, and we can see a takeoff distance over a 50-foot barrier of 2,200 feet. So not bad. That gives us a reasonable margin from the length of the runway at 2,490 feet But then let's go over to the short field performance page, which is with 25 degrees of flaps, and let's do the same atmospheric conditions of 80 degrees Fahrenheit, sea level. We'll go straight across, and we can see we now have, just over 1,900 feet of takeoff distance required. So we can see that by using the short field technique, it is going to reduce our distance required to get over that 50-foot theoretical barrier. So even in this situation where you want to climb at the steepest angle of climb, we're not even using VX. We're going to follow the techniques spelled out in the POH for a short field takeoff. Now, even at airports where there are obstacles, like we talked about, they are very, very rarely ever completely unavoidable. Instances like Sonoma Sky Park, where there's that line of trees and nowhere to go other than straight over them, is exceptionally rare. In most cases, I'm going to suggest doing Joe's magical maneuver of a very gentle turn to just avoid the obstacle. Then you don't have to climb at VX or a short field takeoff technique. If you are going to use a short field technique for a takeoff, there are some things to keep in mind. Number one, make sure that you configure the airplane in accordance with the POH. Some airplanes advise you to use some amount of flaps, others do not. Consult your POH. In some airplanes, the nose up attitude required to get the speeds required is deceptively very high. So I suggest if you've never done it before, go up with a CFI and practice at an airport that doesn't have any obstacles so you can see exactly how high the nose needs to be to achieve those speeds for the short field takeoff. And also, like we talked about, with that nose being so high, if you were to have any issues with your engine, the airplane is at a very low energy state with the nose up that high. So you need to balance the trade-offs of achieving this very steep angle of the climb with the chance of having an engine failure and the predicament you're in with such a low energy state. And then lastly, the configurations and speed used in the short field takeoff are designed for that short amount of time right after liftoff. So be sure to retract the flaps in the gear once you're clear of all obstacles. So Joe, if we don't use VX to climb over mountains and we don't use VX to depart an airport, then where is VX appropriate? Well, for most of us flying standard category general aviation airplanes, it isn't anywhere. If you're flying a Carbon Cub with amazing short takeoff and landing capabilities throughout Idaho, that's a different story, and you could make a fair case there. But that is not most of us. The reality is you should likely be climbing at VY or faster 99% of the time. Aerodynamically, it's worth understanding the concepts behind VX, but from a practical standpoint, it really doesn't make sense to use it. What do you guys think? Is there an appropriate place to use VX that I'm overlooking? Let me know in the comments. Be sure to check out flight-levels.com, and remember, don't just fly, climb to the flight levels. If you enjoyed this video, click here to see 5 techniques to pick up an IFR clearance at a non-towered airport. You're gonna love it. Okay, things to keep in mind, take 1. So, oh God, let's try that again.